Bienvenidos a todos hermanos y hermanas hispanohablantes. Donald Trump acaba de sufrir una humillación internacional enorme después de que Canadá destruyera oficialmente el movimiento separatista que MAGA impulsaba en Alberta para convertirla en parte de su supuesto estado número 51 de Estados Unidos. Pero lo que comenzó a pasar con el boicot económico canadiense y las pérdidas multimillonarias en ciudades estadounidenses está generando demasiado caos. Donald Trump vuelve a perder frente a Canadá. Canadá se anotó una victoria más sobre el régimen de Donald Trump. El régimen de Donald Trump intentó promover un movimiento separatista en la provincia de Alberta, en Canadá, e intentó trabajar con líderes separatistas en Alberta para conseguir todas estas firmas, para lanzar un referéndum para que Alberta se separara de Canadá. Esto era parte del plan de Donald Trump para su estado número 51. Sé que tal vez están diciendo, vaya, eso no está recibiendo mucha cobertura en ningún lugar fuera de Canadá. Tienen razón, y por eso un juez del Tribunal del Banco del Rey en Canadá acaba de anular o derribar este referéndum que MAGA estaba impulsando con MAGA y Daniel Smith en Alberta. Y en realidad fueron los grupos indígenas de Alberta los que lideraron el cambio. Llevaron este caso ante el Banco del Rey, patentemente ilegal porque violaría los derechos de los indígenas que lo representaron. Así que Daniel Smith, MAGA, los planes de Donald Trump para el estado número 51, una gran pérdida para los Estados Unidos, una victoria importante para Canadá. Entonces, ¿qué hizo el primer ministro de Canadá, Mark Carney? El primer ministro Mark Carney fue a Alberta y dio un mensaje de unidad en Alberta. Y también, de una manera muy estilo Mark Carney, se burló de los Estados Unidos. Y con respecto a las negociaciones del TMEC, las negociaciones entre Canadá, Estados Unidos y México, que anteriormente era TLCLAN, el Tratado de Libre Comercio, Mark Carney se queda como, miren, entendemos que Donald Trump y los Estados Unidos probablemente estén muy ocupados lidiando con China, probablemente estén preocupados en este momento sabiendo que Donald Trump no hizo nada en China, bueno, nada más que inclinarse ante Xi Jinping, y el primer ministro Mark Carney dice, pero nosotros estamos aquí, de alguna manera nosotros estaremos listos. Miren lo que dice Mark Carney. Miren el clip, por favor.
As we've said, we're ready to sit down for those negotiations. We know what the major trade issues are for the United States. We have a series of issues around the strategic sectors, including the auto sector, the steel sector, aluminum, forest products, particularly, now derivatives of copper and aluminum and steel. There are big opportunities for both of us if we can come to an agreement. It takes Americans to focus, and I'm sure once they're finished with their discussions with China, they'll focus.
Luego Mark Carney habla de cómo en un mundo que cambia rápidamente, Canadá tiene que convertirse en la fuente de nuestra propia energía accesible y confiable. No podemos depender de los Estados Unidos para siempre. Miren el clip, por favor.
In a rapidly changing world, Canada must become the source of our own affordable, clean, reliable power. Because when we master energy, we master our destiny. This is no small feat, no small step for humankind. We can't use yesterday's tools or concepts. And that's why today's strategy marks an important shift from prohibitions to partnership, from bargaining to building. Yesterday, I had the honor of meeting the astronauts of Artemis II, including Canada's own Colonel Jeremy Hansen. And their mission, their characters, remind us what we can achieve through teamwork, ingenuity, and boldness. And that's the spirit that we're all coming together to launch our mission to build Canada strong, to power Canada strong for all and for all generations.
Y luego el primer ministro Mark Carney también habló sobre liberar todo el potencial de Canadá como una superpotencia energética, y me encanta que Canadá hable de sí misma con toda la razón, como una superpotencia. Miren el clip, por favor.
We have to unlock Canada's full potential as an energy superpower. As the head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, said just last week, Canada has, and I quote, a golden opportunity to build a more sustainable and reliable energy system. This will require bold investments, practical solutions focused on results, not rhetoric, and the full force of a united Canada working together. Working together to build a stronger, more resilient, more independent Canada that works for all. That's our mission.
Así que luego tuvimos que escuchar a Charlie Angus, donde habló sobre la amenaza para Canadá por parte de estos Estados Unidos que impulsan este referéndum de Alberta y cómo MAGA estaba trabajando para desprender a esta provincia de Canadá como parte de los planes para el estado número 51 de Estados Unidos. Miren, mientras que el primer ministro de Canadá, Mark Carney, escuchamos ya al primer ministro de Canadá, Mark Carney, antes. Miren a Charlie Angus y a Jenny Jeremy. Mírenlos aquí discutir sobre esto. Miren esto, por favor.
Do you get a sense of whether people understand just how serious the threat is now that all these things are starting to come into place with this pro-separatist referendum?
Yeah, I think so. I think the biggest thing for me, Charlie, is understanding the U.S.'s involvement in this. To me, we've had the U.S. government propose a $500 billion loan to Alberta to separate us. We've had Bissett come out and say that he's excited about the separatist movement that's happening in Alberta. You know, to me, it's been very clear. And, you know, you talk about Russia and other influences like this. I'm not denying those are there, but I think the biggest threat to Canada and the biggest threat to Alberta is the U.S. And there's no question that this list is not just in the hands of these separatists. It's in the hands of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
And now we have to deal with it. And not just for us, but for the country. Because this is the way that they're trying to break us apart.
Luego tenemos más de Charlie Angus justo aquí, hablando de llevar la pelea MAGA y lo exitoso que es el boicot canadiense.
Okay, so let's just talk about the boycott. Again, I think it's pretty clear that those, the pundits and the thinkers and the talking heads on the panels didn't pay attention to the determination of ordinary Canadians to hold the line. And then people were saying, oh, well, winter comes and the snowbirds, they'll go back to their haunts. And then Las Vegas said, hey, guys, we'll give you money at par. Come on down. We miss you. The latest statistics on the effects of the boycott are fascinating. So they did a study from Donald Trump's famous Liberation Day, April 2025, for that whole course of the year since Liberation Day, and found a staggering 42% drop in travel in the United States. Now, we were already 3 months into the boycott at that moment. So at April 2nd, a year ago, they had already suffered massive losses from Canadians not coming. So the 42% is not the full picture. It's just a partial picture, but it's a significant picture. What it's showing is that, okay, there are people who travel to the United States. People have to travel for work. People travel to visit family. That's perfectly legitimate. But what they're noticing, and this study was able to track cell phone coverage of where people ended up, that people may go down to visit their aunt or their grandmother, but they're not stopping along the way. They're not making long trips. They're going down to visit and they're leaving. Same as if they have to do business. They're going down and they're leaving. The significant drop, though, in business in key areas, Myrtle Beach down 65%. That's staggering. What they're describing it is a fundamental sea change in how Canadians are relating. Other areas where the drop has been significant have been in the key industrial, financial, and tech sectors. What does that tell us? Well, it suggests that Canadians are actually now choosing to look for other markets to do business. Whereas before they would have been heading to San Francisco, heading to the key auto sector communities to build relations, they realize that those relations have been damaged. So they're looking to Netherlands, they're looking to France, they're looking to China. Those numbers are absolutely significant. Many tourist locations are talking about drops of 50% over the course of last year. So yeah, Donald Trump saying, hey, we're not going to tax your tips, vote for me. Well, what if people have lost all their tips, like in Las Vegas, where Las Vegas had more workers dependent on Canadian tourism than the entire manufacturing sector of Nevada, and that's all been blown out of the water thanks to Donald Trump. There's areas, they say, where the losses have been as high as 80% drop in business. Again, we're not bragging as Canadians. We're doing something to defend our sovereignty and to put the pressure on MAGA, and we're putting it in a big significant way. And ordinary Canadians did that. We did that. You did that. Your neighbors did that.
Aquí Charlie Angus habla de ese referéndum que acabo de mencionar y los grupos indígenas que se llevaron en contra del referéndum de Alberta. Mira, por favor.
So, Canadians are holding the line. We need to make sure that our leaders hold the line. And speaking of that, this leads me to the second significant thing that's just happened. The Alberta Court of King's Bench has thrown out the Separatist referendum. They've challenged Elections Alberta for having allowed this referendum to go ahead because this referendum was in defiance of a previous court ruling, and Daniel Smith just told Elections Alberta to ignore a court ruling and go ahead. Well, now the second court stepped in and said, you cannot get away with doing this. Chief Samuel Crowfoot of the Siksika First Nation said the ruling is a reminder that the treaties that Canada signed are not historical documents. They are constitutional agreements. This is such a significant moment. And you know, Prime Minister Carney, you need to wake up as well, because the obligation to consult and include First Nation people in decisions about resource development is a fundamental obligation, and the courts have recognized that. So right now, the First Nations in Alberta, who've been ignored again and again and again, whose treaty rights have been violated again and again and again by the settler state, by the oil and gas giants, they're holding the line for Canada. Chief Crowfoot also said this, which I thought was very significant. We want to be part of improving Alberta, not roadblocks in their efforts to appease a fringe minority. Yes. Forget the fringe minority, Daniel Smith. So what's she going to do? Well, she said, of course, they're going to appeal. Now the Alberta Separatists, who've been coddled by Daniel Smith, are now threatening to go after Daniel Smith and take her down. These are snakes. That's who they are. Will she come back? Will she attempt to bring in the notwithstanding clause? I don't think she can get away with it at this point. She's going to do something. Of course, she's going to do it. But this is a significant win. So let's not worry about what she's going to do tomorrow. Let's just take today and say, we scored something big for Canada and we need to recognize.
Y luego Angus nos deja con buenas noticias. Dijo, miren, necesitamos apreciar nuestras victorias y creo que este es un gran mensaje de cierre. Miren, por favor.
You know, I'm going to close on this, the Charlie Angus football analogy of social change. Not that I was ever a very good football player. When you get involved in social change, you think, okay, we're going to get that one press release and it's going to make everybody understand. You know, maybe we'll do that one rally and then the government or the politicians or City Hall is going to wake up and change. That's not how it works. We never get a touchdown, ever. What we get is control of the ball. You keep control of the ball. You keep your small group moving and moving forward. And so for our American friends in Canada, our football, we got 3 downs, not 4. It's a longer field and it's a faster game. But if you can get 10 yards, try in your efforts. You get 10 yards and you still got control of the ball. Then you keep that control of the ball and you keep moving it down the field and you never give up control of the ball. Does that make sense? I don't know. It makes a lot of sense to me. That's what we do. We just keep control of the ball, we keep control of our game, and we keep focused on what we need to do, which is move that ball down the field and keep pushing them back. So this week, significant things happened, good things happened, and let's just take the time to celebrate because we're going back into the trenches, my friends. We got 1,000 other fights ahead of us, but these are good stories to tell. That's why we keep kicking at the darkness.
Y bueno amigos, acabamos de llegar al final del video, espero de todo corazón que les haya gustado. Si fue así, por favor, háganmelo saber en los comentarios. Recuerden que para mí lo más importante es su opinión. También les recuerdo que si les gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, les va a encantar suscribirse al canal, ya que subo videos como estos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarte diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.